Words of Barbara Ho Gadon, adapted. Here we have gathered in worship. Worship is a place that is scored with memory and shot through with hope. Worship is a place for brokenness and healing. Worship is a place of singing lips, of dancing hearts and soaring spirits. Worship is for children who can't sit still. And worship is for people who limp and whose hands shake and who ask people to repeat what they've said. Worship calls forth quiet reflection, offers its gentle lap for grief. Worship is for joy and loud laughter. Worship is for sitting in faith with the hard things of the world. Worship is a place where we believe love is still here and justice is still possible. Worship is where we sing and we hear and we watch and we touch love. Come, let us worship. Welcome, one and all. I'm glad you've joined in worship today with the community of the First Unitarian Church of Omaha. I'm Reverend Shari Woodbury, the church's settled minister. A special welcome to visitors, whether you are joining us online or in person. This congregation is a community of all ages and abilities. It is a community with a rainbow of gender and sexual identities. It is a community of diverse cultural and class backgrounds. We draw from many sources of inspiration and share common liberal religious values. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. Each week, we acknowledge that where we meet for worship as the First Unitarian Church of Omaha is the land of the Omaha Oto Nations, and that Indigenous people in the greater community have become marginalized and made invisible. May we recognize their presence among us and work with them to resolve issues of poverty, displaced children, and murdered and missing Indigenous women, the MMIW. As our younger children come forward to light the chalice here in the sanctuary, those at home may light your own chalice or candle. And watch out for Chewbacca. He only wants to help, but we don't want the fire to get near him. Okay. The sanctuary singers offer an opening song that is order. All right, the sanctuary singers offer us an opening song that we can think of as a bit of a prayer for the people of Ukraine and Russia, as well as something to get us started in our Stewardship Sunday. This is I Choose Love. Thank you, Sanctuary Singers. All right, kids, if you want to come back up, I have a friend to introduce you to. Is she? What do you call him?
Baby Yoda.
Can y'all hear me? Trying again. Testing. All right. I'm going to use my preacher voice. All right. You can sit next to me if you want to. Try again. Can you hear me now? Ooh, now we're in business. Okay. So it seems like folks recognize this little fella here. Today we are talking in worship about a force of good that our church tries to grow and share in the world. Some people call this force love. Some people call this force God. And the Star Wars movies, they just call it the Force. May the Force be with you. Have you seen Yoda before? Has everybody seen Yoda before? Okay, everybody up front has seen it. Has everybody out there seen Yoda before? Okay, so we tend to know who Yoda is. Now, I'll admit that technically this is Baby Yoda. This is Grogu. You can tell because his eyes are so big and cute, like a baby's eyes. But I'm going to treat him like Yoda because that's who I really want to talk to you about. So who is Yoda? What kind of person is he? Yeah.
He's
The wisest all-master Jedi. So he's a very wise person, and he's a teacher. He teaches other people how to use this force of love, right? How to use the force. Yeah. Did you want to say something else? No? Okay. So that's kind of what our church, what I hope our church does for our members and for you all and for our community is help us learn how to use the force, which I like to think of as love. But what do you notice about this Yoda? Anything you notice? Does he have the same skin color that many of us in the sanctuary have? No? What color is Yoda? Green. I have never seen a green creature before who was, had arms and legs and walked on their legs. Well, he's green like grass and trees and like the swampy planet that he came from. He's green like the color of life. That's kind of how I think of his color. I know, I'm wearing green today too. I'm trying to be a little bit Yoda-like. What else? Anybody want to touch him and see what he feels like? What's he feel like? He feels weird.
And also,
Oh, yeah.
tiny bump.
A little leathery there on top. What about his garment he's wearing here? Or what about this plushy part down here? Yes. Very soft. Okay, so yeah, like a beanbag. So Yoda is gentle, right? And that's often true of the people who can teach us a lot. We have to pay attention and listen and realize, oh, this is someone I want to listen to. What about, you can be gentle. I'm sure you can, Seeker. What about Yoda's size? How big is Yoda? Very small. Yeah. Smaller than you. Yeah. And I don't know on The Mandalorian how big Yoda is because I haven't watched that. My husband watches that, but Baby Yoda's small. So, and the real Yoda is maybe more like your size? The grown-up Yoda? Yeah. Well, I wonder what Yoda would say about this. Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And well, you should not. For my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. That's my attempt at a Yoda voice. So I didn't realize this was one of those talking dolls.
I think I have a baby doll.
You have okay, I'm going to let you do the next Yoda quote. Can you read?
No, I want to.
Oh, okay. How many do I have left? I've got 3 left. So 1, 2, 3. Okay. All right. So now you might have noticed Yoda speaks in kind of a plain way, like a lot of wise people or wisdom books or kids who like to watch and notice things. Yoda uses short words and simple sentences. And his sayings may be small, but they are full of meaning. So I'm going to share with you I want to share with you two things that Yoda says. I don't think I've ever quoted Star Wars before in church, but there's a first time for everything. For any visitors, perhaps I should mention that this church, we believe that wisdom can come from many places: holy books, natural world, inspiring people, arts and culture. So we got a little pop culture today. Today we're going to listen for some wisdom from Yoda. So I'll be curious to hear, kids, what you hear in these sayings, what you think they mean. So one thing Yoda says is, let's see, Sigan was going to go first.
Can you read it quietly?
Want me to read it for you? True. I can't do Yoda voice.
Can you read it in your normal
My normal voice? Truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
Truly wonderful the mind of a child is.
Right, that's a good Yoda voice. Okay. You get the job next time. So why do you suppose that a wise person like Yoda might think a child's mind is wonderful?
Because it's very creative.
Creative. A child's mind is very creative. Imagination. Yeah. What else? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very creative, yes. Lots of imagination in children. Come up with many ideas. And are you curious? Do you have questions? Do you wonder about things? Yeah. Now, something else I've also noticed about a lot of children is that you're naturally empathetic. You feel with other people what they feel. You feel for animals. You want to reach out and cuddle that animal and be nice to it. And if you see someone who's hurt, or if you see someone...
Sometimes when my mom cries, I cry.
If your mom cries, you cry too. Yes, so that's what I'm talking about. So you also have a very empathetic mind. Okay, let's see. Another thing Yoda says...
If no mistake you have made, losing you are. A different game you should play.
Thank you. If no mistake you have made, losing you are. A different game you should play. Well, that's kind of strange. Did you hear that awesome quote? That's kind of strange to say that if you don't make any mistakes, you're losing. Yoda makes it sound like making mistakes is a good thing. Why would that be?
Because you learn from your mistakes.
Oh, you learn from your mistakes. Okay. Yeah. Anything else you think about why mistakes might be a good thing? That's a good insight. Well, I've noticed I don't usually make... Oh, go ahead.
I'm saying no what to do next.
So you know what to do next time. Yeah. And I've noticed that I don't usually make mistakes when I'm doing things I've already done a bunch of times. I usually only make mistakes when I am taking a risk and I'm trying something new, which is, kind of good.
You make the mistakes and then you get better at it.
Then you make the mistakes and get better. Exactly. It kind of expands your world. So that makes sense to me why mistakes are important. Okay, let's see. Can we transfer Baby Yoda here? You wanted the last quote, right? Very last one at the bottom there. Yep.
Go you should to your class. Make some mistakes. Wonderful minds.
Thank you. All right. Off you go, as Yoda said. Thank you. Today is the kickoff of our pledge drive. So each week this month, one of our members or friends will share a bit about why they believe pledging is important and how they decide on their own pledge. So our board president, Catherine Plumley, is going to start us this morning. And incidentally, thank you, Catherine, for the loan of your Baby Yoda.
Good morning. May the force be with you. My name is Catherine Plumley, and I'm the current president of your Board of Trustees, and I'm here to kick off the pledge drive for this month of March 2022. And I wanted to share a little bit about why I give. First of all, because I get to bring Baby Yoda toys to church and share them with you all, so that's a plus. But also because I believe in this place. I believe it's a force for good. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but it is a place of learning, of challenges, and of growth. It's taught me forgiveness. It's given me grace when I didn't have any for myself. It's provided me with warmth, both within its walls and among its people. Let me put it this way. Never have I regretted coming to church, but I've had extreme FOMO when I didn't. And that is fear of missing out, also known as regret. But it takes a lot to keep this machine running. Did y'all know we have 13 staff? I didn't until I saw the packet. But they're not all full-time, but they are all full need. You might not see Bobby, our custodian, but you see his works. And you know his importance, especially during the last 2 years of this pandemic. We have nursery staff. We hired Oliver to take us from virtual to hybrid to streaming, not to mention our invaluable cat, Christina, and Reverend Shari. I give because it takes all of us to keep this living, breathing body of a church alive. So I encourage you to fill out your pledge form. Read some of the information provided in your packet. Everyone should have received a mailing, or it's in the pews before you. I would take a look at the suggested fair contribution guide and find where you are able to give. I encourage you to consider increasing your pledge this year, a percentage point, half a percentage point, even just a set dollar amount. Every cent matters. I understand circumstances are constantly changing, but know that what you put into this church, you'll get back tenfold. The force is strong with this place. Will you join the resistance? Pledge? Will you pledge? Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. I kind of want to keep Yoda up here with me. Hey. All right, let us move into joys and concerns. This is a time each week when we share the wonderful things in our lives that we'd like to multiply by sharing, as well as those things that are challenging. And we can lighten the load a little bit by sharing those as well. I'll begin with some items submitted in advance. Those online can also put things in the chats, and I'll check here in a minute and lift those up. Both members and visitors, young and old, are welcome to participate in this. Let's see. Bill Toll's husband, Bill Brayman, is in the hospital with hepatitis. It's been actually over a month now with complications. He's been moved to UNMC, and they are feeling more hopeful. Prayers and healing energy are much appreciated for Bill and Bill. Let's also hold in our hearts Christina Strong and her father. That's our religious education director. Christina flew to New Mexico Friday, kind of last minute, to be with her father as he is in the ICU there with an uncertain prognosis. So we send our care and concern to them as well. Denise Elaine shares a joy. I'm getting my first visitor from back east tonight. So we're very glad to have you back here in Omaha, Denise, and it's wonderful that you can still be in touch with your family. Let's see. We've already heard a song for the people of Ukraine. I'll mention that in the Joys and Concerns e-blast that will go out early this week. I'm also going to share some links to places you can donate if you want to help the people of Ukraine who are struggling, including through the Hungarian Unitarian Church, which is working hard, and through the International Convocation of UU Women. We also continue sending care and moral support to our partner church in Transylvania and Romania, which is a country that shares a border with Ukraine and was occupied by Russia for many decades in the past. So our Unitarian friends in the Furtos Martanos church there may be quite anxious about what is happening next door in Ukraine, and they may be wondering if they are next. I want to thank Nadine Keith, who I think I saw come in. There she is, for bringing a card that folks can sign. We'll put it in the foyer after the service if you'd like to sign a card that we're going to send to our partner church just to express our care and concern for them. Okay, let's see what we've got from our online folks. Elfried Craig is doing much better. Her broken wrist is very swollen, but anxiety much lower. Glad to hear that she is doing well. I believe that's Katrina Schmidt's mom. The Afghan refugee family we are helping is now in their new location. Yes, they moved into their apartments, 2 apartments this weekend, I understand, with help from our congregation and Second Unitarian. There are still, most of the large furniture needs have been met, but there are still many other needs in the household, and you can find those listed on our Afghan refugee page on our website if you'd like to help. And let's see, Catherine, who must be typing on a device in this room, said, my cousin is a journalist living in Poland and reporting from the border with Ukraine. So let's hold Catherine's cousin in our care as well. This is a perilous time for journalists anywhere near Russia. With all of these joys and sorrows held among us, let us share a centering song. This is a joy in itself, being able to sing together as a congregation, which we'll do for the first time in 2 years in this building as a whole congregation. So if you'd like to sing along, it's number 123, Spirit of Life. Local COVID cases have been going down pretty dramatically, as you may know, and so we are in a good position now as we continue masking to be able to sing together. Number 123, Spirit of Life. On the wings of this music, let us continue in a mood of meditation or prayer. Each week we observe a period of silence so that we may open our hearts in compassion to those in our community who are suffering and to those in our wider world. After I lift up a common prayer, we will observe this minute of silence for individual reflection or meditation, which I'll begin and end with the sound of the bell. But first, you may want to check your posture and close your eyes as I share these prayerful words of my colleague, Kevin Tarsa. This is an interpretation of Psalm 23 for this moment. May I remember in this tender moment that love is my guide always, shepherding me towards ways of openness and compassion. I have what I need, really, with love at my side, above me, below me, in front of me, behind me, inside every cell of me, love infused everywhere. just when the weight of the world I inhabit threatens to drop me in place and press my hope down into the ground beneath me, love invites me to rest for a gentle while and leads the center of my soul to the quiet, still, restoring waters nearby that somehow I had not noticed. And so love, quietly, sets me once again on its tender and demanding path. Even when the walls close around me and the cries of death echo through untold corners, gripping my heart with fear and sadness, I know that all will be well, that I will be well when love whispers near to me, glints at the corner of my eye, rests with gentle and persistent invitation upon my shoulders. Yes, love blesses me, even as the sources and symbols of my pain look on. Love blesses me from its infinite well, and I turn and notice that goodness and kindness and grace follow me everywhere I go. I live in a house of love that will not let me go. I live in a house of love and always will. A time for silence. Each week, we take up an offering in support of our liberal religious values. Half of the loose currency in the offering plate is donated to a cause with a local presence, which advances important principles of Unitarian Universalism. In March, we are supporting the Women's Center for Advancement. The WCA assists anyone in the Omaha area who is experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or human trafficking. For those in the sanctuary, ushers will be passing the offering plates, so you may remain seated. Those online will find a donation link in the chat. And the sanctuary singers, as we give, will be sharing a special gift of music. The Seikei Blessing is a traditional Transylvanian song that comes from our Hungarian Unitarian cousins in that region of Romania. The choir sings it in Hungarian and English as we send our care and friendship to our partner church. What is the force of faith? Why do people carry on spiritual practices and join with others in religious community? Each person here may have a slightly different answer. I believe something positive and powerful is unleashed in our own lives and in the world around us when people choose to foster their own spiritual growth, create community with others, and act on shared values together. You can call that harnessed power God, as the Abrahamic traditions often do. You can call it love with a capital L, which is the language that clicks for me. In the imaginative universe of Star Wars, in a galaxy far, far away, it is simply called the Force with a capital F. Star Wars creator George Lucas had studied mythology through Joseph Campbell, a scholar of comparative religion. Lucas deliberately built his movies on the motif of the hero's journey, an arc of adventure and transformation found in the mythology of almost all human cultures, and on universal archetypes and metaphysical ideas. Lucas's hero in the original Star Wars trilogy, Luke Skywalker, appears at first to be an average person on a backwater planet. But the viewer soon learns that he has Jedi lineage. If properly trained, he can do extraordinary things. He can learn to feel the Force, to align himself with the Force, to use this power for good. And the fate of planets stands in the balance, as the ancient order of the Jedi and their allies work to prevent the galactic empire from gobbling up more and more people and their insatiable appetite for power and resources. What does the story have to do with us? I may feel like a fairly humble person in a run-of-the-mill place, much like Luke Skywalker on his uncle's arid farm. But each one of us, like Luke, can learn to align ourselves with a force of goodness. And each one of us can help to hold at bay the power-hungry, short-sighted empire builders, at least in our corner of the galaxy. I think our Unitarian and Universalist forebears would appreciate this. The early Unitarians taught that God is inside each one of us. We all have access to the ultimate force right here. And early Universalists believed that God's defining quality is an all-encompassing love. Just as God would not leave anyone out of divine love, we should not leave anyone outside the circle of human community and care. Unitarian Universalists today might use different words, but we continue to affirm the inherent worth, the inherent dignity, the inherent divinity of each person. And we continue to side with love and work for a more just and compassionate world. UUs today also affirm the interdependent web of all life of which we are a part. The energy of the Force surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings we are, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you, here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere, yes? Yes, Yoda. I feel that too. Okay, and for the purists here, I know this is actually Grogu, but we're going to call him Yoda, okay? Yoda, of course, embodies the wise teacher. He's the archetype of the sage in small green form, inviting Luke and other trainees to be aware of the force of love and life and wisdom within themselves, and also to be aware of the impulses to greed, power, and apathy in us that the empire may co-opt. Your path, you must decide. Writer Brian Doyle made a similar point, Yoda, in his essay called A Song of Believing. Not quite on the cosmic scale of Star Wars, but still, he asks whether we will accept the march of destruction or instead work for beautiful ideals? Here's an excerpt from Doyle. Look, I know all too well that the story of the world is entropy. Things fly apart. We sicken, we fail, we grow weary, we divorce. We are hammered and hounded by loss and accidents and tragedies. We slide away into the dark oceans behind the stars. But I also know that we are carved of immense, confusing holiness, that the whole point for us is grace under duress, and that you either take a flying leap at nonsensical, illogical, unreasonable ideas like marriage and marathons and democracy and divinity, or you huddle behind a brooding wall. Doyle goes on, I believe that the coolest things cannot be measured, calibrated, calculated, gauged, weighed, or understood, except sometimes by having a child patiently explain it to you, which is another thing that should happen far more often than it does. In short, I believe in believing, which doesn't make sense, which gives me hope. Wise is this Boyle. Feel the force he does. Now, I haven't been in the church all that long, this church. It feels like a long time in COVID time, but it really hasn't been that long. But I see lots of ways that the force of love and care and interdependence are humming along in this place. This community has been connecting in so many ways, online, outside, here and there at once. When someone is sick or suffering, you continue to care for one another with calls, cards, casseroles, and cake pops and cookies. I saw the force moving quietly but powerfully through this community when people gathered in our parking lot to put together resource bags for neighbors of the church who come to this door down on their luck. I saw the force moving with conviction through this church when members and friends made posters in our garden and then joined in an Omaha rally for reproductive justice. I heard the force running through the sanctuary Friday night. It was community night, and as parents chatted in the common room, some of the kids played tag and hide and seek in this darkened sanctuary, sounding like a tribe of Ewoks run amok up here, building community. Some of our past Jedi masters at First Unitarian are gone. This is the lot of mortals. We are constantly passing the baton to the next generation. Others are stepping forward in many ways. Whole teams of people for our streaming program and tech support, wonderful leadership and support in our caring team, our Side with Love team, which is creating new opportunities for social action and legislative advocacy, younger generations stepping into leadership on the auction team, the board of trustees, the ministry team council. So that's happening. The reality is that we need to be always replenishing the time volunteered and the leadership lent to the church's mission to keep it going. And we also need to be continually generating the financial resources to keep the force flowing through this place. We've lost some of our Jedi master level pledgers in recent years. Even before that, we did not have a healthy distribution of pledges across different levels of giving. The plain truth is, First Unitarian has been too dependent on a small number of large pledgers for too long. It's not a sustainable pattern. Let's take a look. So here you can see what our pledge distribution looks like currently in broad strokes. Each of the columns there represents 1/4 of the pledge dollars that fund our mission. The blue column shows current pledging levels at our church. And the orange column represents what a healthy distribution of pledges would be for any church, one that would not leave a church so vulnerable to big income fluctuations and the loss of departed members. So members and friends, when you receive your stewardship mailing in the mail this week, please review the information it contains and consider if you can move up a level. It doesn't have to be as big a leap as from one quartile to the next, but the Fair Share Giving Guide shows a number of levels, and consider whether that's something that you're able to do to improve the stability of our mission and the way the force is coming out of this place. Okay. Now, what if we don't make much improvement in this chart with pledges for the coming year? Well, I don't like to think about that. Named your fear must be. Before banish it, you can. Well, all right. Okay. I guess I can name some of the ways that we could slide toward entropy so that we can hopefully avoid those scenarios. So one would be, if we don't get enough people moving up levels in pledging, we can't go on with our same level of ministry and support if our chart keeps looking year after year the way it has. We can't go on with the vibrancy if all the people who fell out of the church-going habit during the pandemic decide that their affiliation with this church isn't important to them anymore, that they'd rather donate their charitable dollars entirely to other organizations. Sadly, if we don't improve our financial health, the church might burn through its endowment and then still end up having to cut support for programs. Without adequate support, First Unitarian would have a hard time attracting and integrating new people into the congregation. The church would likely devolve into a friendship club for a shrinking pool of people. It would be unable to sustain positive work for the community beyond its doors. I see it becoming even more dependent upon a small number of super volunteers who get burned out and eventually quit the church. As it spiraled down, the church would offer fewer and fewer ways for our own members to learn, connect, grow, and make a difference. First Unitarian would gradually fade into irrelevance, its long, proud heritage squandered and lost. What might happen if we succeed? I see First Unitarian serving as a kind of Jedi training center, a ritual space and beloved community all in one. As a group, we will harness the forces of love and healing and connection, both in our own lives and in the greater community. People are more whole, more compassionate, and more effective at justice making because this church is here. I see a future in which First Unitarian builds community, fosters spiritual growth for individuals and groups, and puts our values into action season after season with a new vibrancy. This church becomes a force for good well beyond the number of people that come here, and far beyond what you might have dreamed before. We're going to have a piano interlude in a moment, and I invite you in this time to imagine what it might look like during this next year if First Unitarian indeed functions as a lightning rod of love, serving people of all ages and stages, of walks of life, inside the church and beyond our walls. What's your vision for this church in the coming year and beyond? If you're so moved, those here in the sanctuary can turn to a neighbor and share your thoughts on that as we hear the interlude. And those online can type into the chat, what's your vision for this coming year if we are our most vibrant as a church community? All right. The Jedi training has begun. Ooh, someone online said our church would do more programming to help members and friends to promote climate justice. And I was chatting a bit with our choir director. We'd be able to do some music we haven't been able to do yet, including a song called Great Trees. It's really, really wonderful, and I know you want to hear it if we had more people in the choir. Well, I would love to hear about your vision, as I know the Board of Trustees would. We'll save the chat for them, and if anyone here in the sanctuary wants to share your thoughts by email as you've had more time to reflect, you can send it to board, B-O-A-R-D, at first, spelled out, firstuuomaha.org. I'm going to share 3 images with you that capture my sense of what the work of the church is in the near term, like this next church year. These are 3 soul cards, images that spoke to me last fall as I was discerning where to put my own energies and what is needed as we move into a late pandemic, eventually maybe post-pandemic, I don't know, time. And these images are all the work of artist Deborah Koff Chapin. So here's the first of the 3 soul cards. It speaks to me of the most immediate need after 2 years of COVID-19 life, which is to connect and reconnect people with the church community, with each other. That means rebuilding social ties for the many who have suffered isolation or just fallen away without really meaning to. Folks who perhaps did not have the resilience to stay active with the church, or whose roles in caregiving and beyond had to take priority in their own lives during this time. We need more in-reach to our wayward members and friends, more opportunities to plug people back in. So I imagine things like a pool party this summer, which people at Community Night voted for on Friday, informal game nights, karaoke in the common room, more monthly hikes with our hiking club, also picnics and potlucks when we can eat outside. Getting people back into this building as they are ready to experience this beautiful, peaceful space and to feel part of this community and worship. Inviting people in a proactive way to small groups like Cups, AHA, Soul Matters groups, our music programs, compassionate communications, women's religious studies groups, morning reflections. And of course, we want to continually welcome brand new people into this community and include them in such activities too. So reconnecting people to each other. We've been through a couple years now of various levels of social isolation, and so it may take some months or even years to weave people back into the community, and we can be intentional about that. The second soul card that spoke to me is this one. For me, this image evokes the need for healing that is deep beyond words, the need to grieve all that we have lost during this time. There is grief in this image in the bent heads, the closed eyes, the waves emanating from their bodies. The healing process may come from singing and shared silence. Ritual may also help this kind of healing. And sometimes sharing our own stories with words in settings where we feel okay to be vulnerable. This card reminds me that there is a shadow lingering over us from the pandemic and other once-in-a-lifetime happenings of this period, like the political strife, the insurrection, racial justice awakenings. We have suffered a collective trauma. It will take time to heal. So we can be pastoral and tender with one another. Offer another person a shoulder to cry on, or just let it be okay when it is not okay, and move through it together. And the third soul card I selected out of several decks of images was this one. A figure emerges out of a challenging past and into an open and unknown future. The figure is standing in a dark doorway facing bright sunlight, so bright maybe they can't quite see what's ahead. I notice there are kind of leafy shapes coming out of the figure, and the portal itself, the doorway itself, is kind of leaf-shaped, suggesting that this transition will be organic, something to work with and welcome, but not to force. I also notice the person's hands. One hand is back and open in a receptive position. It's ready to receive and collaborate with what's coming next, ready to work with that force. The other hand is raised in a gesture of pause or moderation. It suggests to me that we not move too quickly, but pace ourselves. If there's going to be change, and we can't really go back to the old normal, can we? The world has changed. If there's going to be more change in the church, we can stay attuned to our own capacity to metabolize the change. How much can we take at once? Pace it, so that we can adapt and choose, both as individuals and as a church community. We can move through this period of transition with grace, discerning what fits our values and vision and who we want to be now. And I'm going to share a fourth and final image with you, not a soul card. This is the logo that our First Unitarian member and artist Sandy Bruns drew for our stewardship campaign this year. I see the force of good that flows through this church represented in a number of ways. There are the bolts of energy that move us forward proactively. A dollar sign representing the money that funds the force in this place. Yoda, representing the wisdom we bring to bear and how we go forward as a church community. He's down there in the bottom right corner. And the flame of our chalice candle inside the U of funding. You might also notice a light shining through the front window of the church. We've been holding back for a couple of years now, still connecting and caring and making a difference in the community around us, but carefully, with caution. As we reconnect and heal and emerge into the light of a new day, we can also let the light of this church shine its brightest to nourish us and to serve the wider community. May it be so. Amen. I invite you to sing with gusto our closing hymn, number 118, This Little Light of Mine, and feel free to harmonize. You can also clap. Good. Stop doing that. May we let our light shine on one another. May the light of our love shine on the community around us. And may we each help to fund the force of love that shines from this church for this moment and for the generations to come. Amen, and blessed be. Bet George Lucas has never heard that version before. All right, a couple of announcements. Safety updates, as you have experienced. We are singing hymns again, hallelujah, and passing the basket. We are at the lowest numbers we've had since August, and things are looking very hopeful for the near term. So I expect we're going to stay that way for a while. Please do. Small groups also can choose to remove masks and have food indoors if they want to. Please check in with members of your groups before you do that, and be mindful of those who are most vulnerable and be observant of what is needed for them. You already heard the happy news about our Afghan refugee family settling into their new home. There's information on our website about ways you can help support that family. Those online, we will have a Zoom breakout group now, and I'm going to put my free hugs button on for anyone here who wants one.